Hi, everyone. My name is Dennis Dyack. I am the CEO of Apocalypse, and I am here to talk about creating a game development pipeline on AWS. This is going to be a 15-minute talk, and we'll tell about our experiences of moving our entire company to basically the studio in the cloud. So, as an overview, I'm going to be talking about what Apocalypse is, what Apocalypse Studios does, and really what is a very important issue is understanding clouds and communicating that to the people who will be making decisions like this if they want to move their development pipeline to the cloud as well. And then I want to talk about our experience and propelling us to the cloud. And I'm also going to want to talk about how it's been for us since we've moved to the cloud, and hopefully give everyone some good material to take away to consider if they want to do it themselves or if you want to do it. So, all right. So, Apocalypse Studios, what do we do? Well, we are a video game developer. We were founded in 2018. And I've made video games for a very long time. I've been in the video game industry now for over 30 years. And when I formed Apocalypse, we wanted to take a very cloud-first approach. So I have been thinking about clouds for a while. And our goal as a video game developer is to change the way people experience games. And we're taking a cloud-first approach to everything. The game that we're currently working on, our first game, is called Dead House Sonata, where you play the undead fighting the living. So you play vampires, revenants, ghouls, all that fun kind of stuff. And it's a narrative-driven action RPG that takes advantage of the cloud in the most possible way, or the best possible ways. So, when I talk about understanding clouds, I mean from more than a technological experience. From when it came to making this decision of moving our environment to the cloud, it was really an advantage to me being the CEO of the company, where I looked at all the things that we were doing and were able to make the decisions very quickly with our technical staff as well. Now, my background is in computer science, so I also have an edge there. But I think it's really important to understand clouds, and more from just a technical experience of what AWS can do to people, or do for people, I should say, what you can do and how it can affect your pipeline and what advantages and disadvantages it may have for a development environment. Understanding that and communicating that to the people that you'll be working with if you're thinking about this is absolutely critical, because without that understanding, it's very difficult to make this decision, because there are a lot of inherent risks that, quite frankly, before we made this jump, really concerned us as well. And so clouds do have many, many advantages. It's leading huge amounts of economic growth in society right now. I'm a huge believer. I've been talking about clouds since 2007 in the video games industry. And since that time, free-to-play games and other types of games that are cloud-based are now leading the economic front for games, and that's where most of the money is being made. AWS Game Tech as well is really provides a ton of tools for games to launch. And quite frankly, most video games, most of the successful video games that you see out there do run on AWS Game Tech, which is a plethora of different tools that you can use to launch your games. And understanding these and how they can affect and improve a gaming environment for consumers is really, really important. So from that standpoint, really understanding this, and helping communicate this to the people who need to make these decisions, the people who are running the companies, very, very important. And it's also the key to building communities. Online communities right now, when we create games, as a game developer, we feel that we work for gamers. So having their input, all of our, of course, websites and forums are on the cloud and on AWS, and integrating that into a pipeline that makes sense and creating tools where the gamers themselves can have an impact is very, very important. And of course, with cloud technology, the medium is the message for video games, and it is an entirely new medium that's out there when it comes to persistence and online persistence and communities and what we can do to really help enhance games. I'm not going to talk about that a lot here, but I do encourage everyone to check out deadhousesonata.com and some of the things that we're doing on the cloud front area that I think is pretty exciting and pretty eye-opening. So So let me tell you the story of how we thought about taking the studio to the cloud and moving our whole development environment over. Um, we essentially were getting ready for GDC. I was going to do a talk on interactive streaming and some really other new cloud technologies that we were working on. We had demos all set up. And then, of course, suddenly GDC was canceled. Everything started shutting down in our area when we're in Niagara Falls. And we realized really quickly we had to make a decision. If our offices were going to be shut down, how possibly can we transition really, really quickly? I had often talked about with our technical people what it would be like to have a complete build environment on AWS where we didn't have local servers. Because currently, at the time when we were considering this, we had a custom built server. We spent around $15K on it. We didn't spend a ton, and that's not a lot for a game developer. Some game developers, like my previous company, we had spent well over $1 million on our internal servers to make sure that we had the best pipelines and the best servers to accommodate hundreds of people working on games. Game development can get quite large, and you can have literally thousands of people working on a single game. So getting that environment cluster and server cluster working as well as possible is really, really important. So we had our own internal server all set up. And we were, frankly, taken totally off guard like everyone else was. And we knew we had about 2 weeks to transition and decide what we wanted to do. So we immediately called AWS up, who we're partnered with. We're a white glove partner. We love working with Amazon. And we started asking questions on how we could best move things over. What really terrified us, quite frankly, was the last mile, because we were not set up for any kind of external infrastructure. We had of course, we had our LANs internally at the office, but we weren't ready for what it would be like to use something that would be completely remote. So we would have to look at check-ins. We use Git and how that all would work outside of the company. So what did we do? Well, we immediately started uploading our entire repository to an Amazon S3 server. And it took about a week. And after we started the upload, we started at the same time in parallel, started looking at, we use GitLabs as our Git server. And we're looking to see if GitLabs would work well with AWS. Well, lucky for us, GitLabs is partnered with Amazon, and they had many tools that were already set up, and the integration was quite simple. And actually, the week that it took us to upload, had we investigated it further and taken more time, Amazon actually has tools to upload huge amounts of data very quickly, probably a lot quicker than that week that it took us. But we were doing all this on the fly, and there was virtually no planning. So we ended up moving our repository up to S3 with all our assets. Video game development has a lot of assets, and we use a lot of textures, a lot of 3D models. So if you're working in the games environment, it's actually quite hefty. And most of our LFS stuff that we use for Git is all on the S3. So then we started looking at moving our build servers to an EC2. And we essentially looked at several options and created what was a custom solution on AWS Lambda. So what happens is we will do a build every night, and it will go through Lambda, it will scale up, and then scale down when it's all finished. And the interesting thing, and the thing that really blew us away, was our builds used to take, on average, with this custom built server at our office, take around 6 to 8 hours, on average 7 hours. And when we moved it to AWS, we got it down to 20 minutes and $2 a build. We're really worried about the cost. We weren't sure how much it was going to cost. But as it turns out, most of the data transfer we were able to keep on AWS. And there's actually no cost between these assets from server to server within the AWS structure. So it was actually quite cheap. And as you can see, at $2 a build, it will never overtake that initial small cost, quite frankly, of the actual server pipeline that we had. And if we were a much larger company, we would save much, much more money. And I've been told that we can even make the builds faster. It's just not as cost effective. So what we do is we scale up for the builds each night. We get a build in 20 minutes, and everyone can quickly download that build if they need an absolute clean build built from scratch, which is something in the video game development community that you need to do. Creating clean builds from scratch is very, very important, especially when you start going to different platforms like PC or PlayStation or Xbox. This kind of setup is very common within the video game community. So yeah, we were quite happy. And of course, with CloudWatch, we were able to monitor the health. And you can see our setup here as we have it on the page. That's pretty straightforward. People check in their assets, and everything gets queued up for a build nightly. The build scales up. We save all the assets to S3. People can pull down later on, and it's quite a good system. So, how's it been since then? Well, it's been pretty good. We essentially have closed our office down as of July, and we haven't looked back. Everyone unanimously voted that we're going to continue to work from home. And what really blew us away, what really was surprising, is that last mile that we thought would be a big problem of uploading to the Git server and processing your assets for each one individually, because frankly, most people are just using non-commercial modems that they use from home for their internet connections, and it works great. It's actually the speed difference is not doesn't slow us down at all. And if I was to say the only deterrent from being a studio in the cloud and moving the pipeline off is the loss of face-to-face interaction, but that's just a problem in general with working from home, and it's not even that big of a deal. So once the time comes around, we'll be able to meet face-to-face, we will, but we are never going to go back to the office. And we plan on, of course, as we continue to develop, start using more services in AWS like Lambda, Cognito, Dynamo, GameLift, all of these tools, which are part of the AWS suite, which are already integrated and ready to go, are going to be just a natural step forward for us as we continue to develop the game. So when you look at something from 7 hours to 20 minutes, you have a 2,100% speed increase. And you go from, for us, which we're a small startup, from a $15K expense of an internal server to a $700 a year cost generally for these builds, which is frankly nothing. We've never looked back. We have something that gets full backups, of course, completely fireproof, completely secure. We've never been happier with everything. So I hope this is enlightening for people and that you can take away something as someone who may set this up for another external developer to look at and say, hey, if you wanted to move your pipeline to the cloud, this is one way that Apocalypse did it, and is pretty straightforward, very cost effective. And we're very, very happy with the results and have never looked back. So thank you, everyone. I hope you found this informative. I know it was a short talk, but happy to connect with people and talk about it more if there are questions. Thank you so much.